Janelle Patton was born on June 30th, 1972, in Sydney, Australia. As an only child, she was the center of her parents' world. From a young age, she developed a deep love for music, playing both piano and clarinet, and was active in her school's music group. After high school, she enrolled in medical school but dropped out after a year to focus on her career. She took a job at a bank and worked her way up, but over time, the fast pace of city life began to wear her down. She started dreaming of somewhere quieter. In October 1999, at 27, Janelle moved to Norfolk Island, a remote, self-governed territory nearly 1,000 miles from mainland Australia. With only around 2,000 residents, Norfolk was tight-knit and peaceful. Crime was virtually non-existent, and new faces were rare aside from tourists. Janelle settled in quickly. She got a job at a local hotel, made friends, and embraced the island's slower pace. Life felt simpler. In late March 2002, a year and a half after her move, her parents came to visit for the first time. Janelle was thrilled. They arrived on March 30th, and she spent the day proudly showing them around the island. The next morning, March 31st, Janelle had a shift at the hotel. After work, they planned to meet again. Since her rented cottage was too small for guests, she'd booked her parents a hotel room nearby. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Your support means a lot to us and helps us grow. A huge thank you to everyone who's been watching. Janelle finished her shift around 11 a.m. and headed out for her usual walk, a short loop from her home to a scenic lookout. Her parents expected her around noon. When she didn't show up, they assumed she was delayed and went for a walk themselves, leaving a note at her door. By 2:30 p.m., the note was still untouched. Worried, they tried calling her, but got no response. On such a small island, it was unthinkable that someone could simply vanish. They went to her cottage, unlocked, which wasn't unusual for Norfolk. Her car was parked outside. Nothing inside suggested anything was wrong. Just then, a friend of Janelle's arrived. When told she hadn't been seen all day, the friend suggested checking her walking route. They drove along the path, but found nothing. Back at the hotel, they spoke to the manager who called around the island. No one had seen Janelle. It was now 8 p.m. Her parents called the police. At the station, officers listened, then gave them chilling news. An hour earlier, a tourist from New Zealand had found a body near Narrow Waterfall. She had noticed a large black bag, and when she got closer, saw a human hand sticking out from underneath. Police arrived and discovered the body of a woman, partially clothed, with visible injuries. As Janelle's parents spoke with police, the scene was still being processed. Officers feared the victim might be Janelle, but didn't want her parents to see the body. Instead, they contacted Janelle's neighbor, the woman who rented her the cottage, and asked her to come to the scene. When she arrived, she took one look and confirmed the worst. It was Janelle Patton. The body was handed over to the medical examiners, and even in the early stages, it was clear. This was a murder. The news stunned the entire island. Norfolk hadn't seen a homicide since 1893. Crime of any kind was rare. Local police were used to dealing with minor scuffles or the occasional domestic dispute. Never a case like this. Realizing they were facing something far beyond their usual scope, they called in reinforcements. Investigators from mainland Australia flew in immediately. The medical team soon discovered 64 separate injuries on Janelle's body, bruises and cuts, many of which appeared to be caused by a sharp object, possibly broken glass. That theory was backed up by shards of glass found tangled in her hair, believed to have come from a smashed bottle. There were also deep bruises on her wrists, suggesting she had been held down during the attack, raising the possibility that more than one person was involved. Alongside the cuts, examiners found stab wounds, pointing to the use of a knife as well. Traces of green and white paint were discovered on Janelle's skin, clothing, and in her hair. Forensic experts believed these particles might have come from the attacker or from their vehicle, possibly transferred during the disposal of her body. Some of Janelle's clothing was missing, raising early suspicions of a sexual motive. But after examination, the forensic team found no evidence of sexual assault. They did, however, uncover a DNA sample from an unknown female on her body. That discovery only deepened the mystery. The investigation was further complicated by an intense but brief rainstorm that hit the island around 3:30 p.m. that day. While it may have washed away crucial evidence, like footprints, blood traces, or other forensic materials, it helped narrow down the timeline. Rainwater had pooled in the black plastic sheet covering Janelle's body. That meant she had been left there before the storm hit, likely dead and undiscovered for at least 3 hours. While forensic teams searched for physical clues, police worked to reconstruct Janelle's final movements. They learned that after leaving work, she stopped at a local store before heading home. Not long after, her landlord saw her leaving for her daily walk. Roughly 10 minutes later, a resident reported driving past Janelle as she walked along the road. The next sighting came from someone who lived near the end of that walking route. She saw Janelle standing beside a white car, talking to the driver. She believed there were 2 men inside, but acknowledged there might have only been one. Just 5 minutes later, 2 other residents living nearby said they heard what sounded like a child crying in the distance. Another man reported hearing a scream, but by the time he stepped outside, everything had gone quiet. Based on the witness accounts, police concluded that the attack likely happened around 11:45 a.m., just half an hour after Janelle's shift had ended. With no strong leads, investigators sent the black plastic sheet that had covered Janelle's body to the mainland for advanced forensic testing. The results came back sometime later. Experts had found 10 fingerprints on the sheet, but all of them were smudged, making identification difficult. Still, detectives pushed forward. They compiled a list of everyone on the island the day of the murder. Over 2,700 people, including both locals and tourists. Authorities asked everyone between the ages of 15 and 70 to voluntarily submit fingerprints and DNA samples. About half complied. Out of 1,300 sets of prints, not a single match was found. With nothing usable from the fingerprints, police shifted their focus to Janelle's personal relationships. Her diary became a critical piece of evidence. It contained detailed entries about her life on the island and her interactions with various residents. From the diary, investigators learned that Janelle had a falling out with one of her friends. When she first moved to Norfolk, this friend helped her find temporary housing, staying with a man the friend knew. But Janelle moved out shortly after, following what appeared to be disagreements. That man later raised red flags. Several witnesses recalled him threatening Janelle publicly. After her body was found, he reportedly asked someone to lie and provide a false alibi for the day of the murder. His motive wasn't clear, but police uncovered one key detail. He was secretly involved in a relationship with the same woman who had helped Janelle find housing, despite the fact that she was married with children. Janelle had written about the affair in her diary, and investigators speculated that the couple may have wanted to keep her quiet. Both the man and the woman agreed to submit fingerprints. Neither matched the ones found on the plastic sheet. Police also searched their homes and vehicles, but found no evidence connecting them to the crime. Another man, someone Janelle had dated for 9 months, was also investigated. But once again, nothing linked him to the murder. Janelle's diary named several other individuals with whom she had tense or complicated relationships. All of them provided fingerprints and DNA. None were a match. At one point, detectives even considered the unthinkable: Janelle's own parents. After all, the murder occurred just 1 day after they arrived on the island. But that theory went nowhere. Months passed. Police re-examined old evidence, chased down new leads, and broadened their search. But every path led to a dead end. Eventually, they issued a $300,000 reward for any information that could help solve the case. Still, no tip brought them any closer to finding Janelle's killer. 2 years later, investigators reopened the case and took another look at the fingerprint samples collected from both locals and tourists. This time, they expanded their pool to include prints from suspects involved in other recent investigations on the island. Since all the fingerprints had been stored on paper, analysts had to go through them manually, one by one. The process was slow, but eventually, a breakthrough came. A suspect's fingerprints matched 2 of the smudged prints found on the black plastic tarp that had been used to wrap Janelle's body. That suspect was 26-year-old Glenn McNeil. Back in 2002, not long after Janelle's murder, police had questioned McNeil in connection with a home invasion. He wasn't arrested, but his fingerprints had been taken and filed away with the case. Police quickly learned more. In 2002, McNeil had owned a white Honda, the same kind of car a witness reported seeing near Janelle just minutes before her death. Even more suspicious, McNeil had left Norfolk Island not long after the murder. Originally from New Zealand, he had moved to Norfolk in 2000 with his wife and worked as a chef. But around the time of the murder, his marriage ended and he moved off the island. By the time police identified him as a suspect, he was living in New Zealand with a new wife and 2 children, making him difficult to reach. Still, detectives had reason to believe he hadn't taken his car with him when he left. They began searching for the white Honda, hoping it might hold valuable evidence. Eventually, they found it. The car had been abandoned and was now overgrown with weeds on a property near McNeil's former home. Police seized the vehicle and got a warrant to search the house where he had once lived. Forensic experts combed through both. Inside the car, they discovered white and green paint particles, an exact match to the microscopic traces found on Janelle's body. They also found glass shards, which matched others recovered from his home. An expert was brought in to analyze the materials. He confirmed that the glass shards from the car, the house, and those found on Janelle's clothes and body were all from the same product and had been manufactured at the same time. One shard even showed part of an engraved label. It turned out to be from a wine bottle, further linking all the glass fragments to the same source. In the backyard of McNeil's old house, police discovered a black tarp identical to the one used to wrap Janelle. In the trunk of his car, they found several human hairs and biological traces. Unfortunately, the evidence had degraded over time. No DNA could be extracted from the samples. Still, detectives didn't give up. They sent the hairs to a U.S. lab equipped with the most advanced forensic technology available. But the process stalled. Overwhelmed with cases, the first lab couldn't prioritize the samples. Eventually, one of the lead detectives flew to the U.S. personally to deliver them to another lab. And finally, in early 2006, the results came in. The hairs were a match. They belonged to Janelle. With the evidence in place, police secured an arrest warrant and traveled to New Zealand to take Glenn McNeil into custody. He was extradited to Australia and formally charged with Janelle Patton's murder. During his first police interrogation, Glenn McNeil stunned detectives by immediately confessing. He claimed that on the morning of Janelle's murder, he had smoked weed and gone for a drive around the island. At some point, he bent down to grab a pack of cigarettes, lost sight of the road, and hit something. At first, he thought he'd struck an animal, but when he stepped out of the car, he saw a woman lying underneath it. Panicked, McNeil said he loaded the body into his trunk and drove home. Once there, he spent several hours using drugs. Later, he claimed he heard noises coming from the trunk and realized the woman was still alive. That's when, according to him, he grabbed a kitchen knife, opened the trunk, and stabbed her multiple times. He then wrapped the body in a tarp and dumped it near the waterfall. But detectives quickly saw through the story. Almost nothing in McNeil's account matched the forensic evidence. Medical examiners confirmed Janelle's injuries weren't consistent with being hit by a car. His version also didn't explain the wrist bruising, the cuts from broken glass, or why parts of her clothing were missing. And if he had stabbed her in the trunk, there would have been blood. But forensics found none. Detectives challenged him on the inconsistencies, hoping he'd come clean. But McNeil stuck to his story. The case went to trial in mid-2006. It was held on Norfolk Island, with jurors selected from the local community. At the first hearing, McNeil changed course entirely. He denied any involvement and even claimed he couldn't remember making a confession at all, blaming the memory gap on supposed mental health problems, though he offered no medical evidence to support it. By then, investigators had uncovered something else. They anticipated McNeil's defense team would point to one troubling piece of evidence: the presence of female DNA on Janelle's body. It wasn't just found on her clothes, but under her fingernails, suggesting she may have scratched a woman during a struggle. This raised the possibility that a woman may have been involved and threatened to complicate the entire case. After McNeil's arrest, detectives began asking around, trying to find any connection between him and Janelle. One of Janelle's friends recalled a strange moment just 2 or 3 weeks before the murder. Janelle had asked her if she knew a woman named Alicia and her husband, Glenn McNeil. The friend said she didn't know them personally, but had seen them around. Janelle didn't elaborate. She simply changed the subject. That same friend later remembered seeing Alicia on the day of the murder. She was outside the hotel, acting strangely, and covered in something red. When asked about it, Alicia, looking nervous, claimed it was just paint and quickly walked away. At the time, the friend didn't think much of it and never mentioned it to police, until they questioned her about McNeil and his wife. Alicia was called to testify in court. She denied any involvement in the murder. It's still unclear whether police ever compared her DNA to the female sample found on Janelle's body. Oddly, the same friend later changed her testimony entirely, claiming that a religious cult of 6 people was responsible for Janelle's death. The revelation threw her earlier statements into question and left investigators unsure what to believe. As for McNeil, he continued to deny any involvement, maintaining that he had no memory of confessing. But in the end, the jury wasn't convinced. On March 9, 2007, Glenn McNeil was found guilty of Janelle Patton's murder and sentenced to 24 years in prison. Even after the conviction, many continued to question whether Glenn McNeil was truly the person responsible for Janelle Patton's murder. The most persistent theory, based on witness statements and the nature of her injuries, was that he didn't act alone. Some believed he either killed Janelle with someone else or helped cover up a crime committed by another person. Years after the trial, McNeil unexpectedly came forward with a new version of events. He now claimed he knew who had really killed Janelle. According to this story, it was a man who had been selling him drugs. McNeil said that on the morning of the murder, he was at home when the dealer and his wife showed up. The man told him there was a body in the trunk and ordered McNeil to get rid of it, threatening to harm both him and his wife if he refused. Fearing for his life, McNeil claimed he did as he was told. He moved the body into his own car, wrapped it in a tarp, and dumped it near the waterfall. He also said he wore medical gloves while handling the body. But detectives were quick to point out a key inconsistency. McNeil's fingerprints were found on the tarp, something that shouldn't have been possible if he'd worn gloves. He claimed to have buried the gloves in his yard, but when police searched the area, they found nothing. McNeil even named the man he accused. The man was known to police as a suspected drug dealer, and phone records showed regular contact between them. But investigators concluded that those calls only confirmed a buyer-seller relationship, nothing more. In the years that followed, more theories emerged. Some were wildly speculative and contradictory. One rumor circulated by media outlets even suggested Janelle was working as a police informant, and that her murder was a targeted hit. But no solid evidence ever backed that claim or any of the others. On February 1st, 2024, Glenn McNeil was released from prison early and deported to New Zealand. He remains under supervision while on probation, but legally, he's a free man. To this day, McNeil continues to insist that others were responsible for Janelle's death. Whether he'll change his story again remains to be seen. Until then, the case, though officially closed, still leaves behind more questions than answers. Share your thoughts on this story in the comment section. And don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching.